You ever notice how some folks can drive right over your boundaries like they're not even there? That's how it started for me. And believe me, I'm not talking in metaphors here. I'm talking about real tire tracks across real Nebraska dirt, a white Escalade carving a line through everything I'd sweated for. Day after day, like the world owed her a shortcut. I'll get to that. But let me back up a sec. I'm Nate Lyman. Nebraska born. Nebraska built. Most of what I own, I earned with my hands. 1 acre at a time. I'm a stubborn old man by anyone's measure, been pushing past 60 for a few years now. With knuckles more scar than skin and a porch that's older than I am. Out here, life's supposed to be simple. Sunrise coffee. Cattle grazing in the distance. The barn creaking like it's remembering things I never will. And corn, lots of corn. 80 acres of it. Waving in the wind. Whispering the kind of secrets you only get if you put in the hours. I wasn't born into quiet. I fought for it. If you've ever worked a field before dawn or stretched a fence line till your shoulders burned, you know what I mean. That feeling when you can finally sit down. Cup of coffee in hand. Nobody telling you how high the grass should be. Nobody taping rules to your mailbox. Freedom. That's the real wealth. Isn't it? There's no HOA out here. That's the best part. No committee. No fines. No Karen with a ruler in her purse trying to measure how rebellious your grass is. Just space and sky and the good Lord's wind. That's what I thought. Anyway, until the morning that white SUV came barreling through my life. And everything changed. May morning, 7:12 a.m. Sharp. Funny how the worst days have a way of burning themselves into your memory. I was out on the porch, cradling a cup of coffee like it was the last warmth left in the world, watching the dew settle on the corn, thinking about fence repairs and not much else. And then I heard Ida hum. Not like any farm truck or neighbor's beater pickup. This was new. This was expensive. It was the kind of engine you only hear in a dealership where the sales guys wear loafers and smell like cologne. Out over the Ridgeobama, a white Cadillac Escalade, gleaming in the sunlight like it was showing off for someone. Except she wasn't on the gravel. She wasn't even close. She was plowing a diagonal through my cornfield. Mud arcing up behind the tires like she was making her own parade route. I didn't even move. Just stood there. Coffee halfway to my lips. Brain short-circuiting. Who does that? Who just drives through another man's cornfield? Then get this, she waves at me. Like I'm a parade spectator. Little pageant wave through the windshield. Blonde hair bouncing. Sunglasses like she just walked off a billboard. Looking straight at me and not seeing me at all. Then she's gone back toward the gated entrance of Creek View Bluffs like she had somewhere urgent to be and the world needed to move for her. I remember saying out loud, well, I'll be damned. You ever have a moment like that? When reality just refuses to make sense? I stood there so long my coffee went cold. The next day, I tried to convince myself it was an accident. Maybe she was lost. Maybe she dropped her phone. Nobody would do that on purpose. Right? Wrong. Because the next morning, same time. Same SUV. Same smile that wasn't a smile. This time, she cut closer to the cattle fence, spooking my steers. I jogged out waving my arms, trying to flag her down, like maybe logic would work where decency hadn't. She rolled her window halfway, just enough for me to see the gold rims of her sunglasses and enough for her to size me up like I was the one trespassing. Ma'am, this is private property. You can't keep driving through here, I said, as polite as church on Sunday. She smiled or did something like it. Relax, she said. There's a community easement. Everyone knows that. It's been here since the 70s. Not on my deed. I told her. No easement. You're trespassing. She actually laughed full and loud, like I'd told the best joke she'd heard all week. Well, maybe you bought the wrong land, she tossed out. And then she drove around me like I was just another orange traffic cone. I went back to my porch, sat down, and stared at the tire ruts slicing my field. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was stunned. Disbelief. You know? Later that afternoon, Hank Doyle rolled by. Hank's what you'd call original stock. Been farming longer than most folks have been alive. He sat beside me, stared at the tracks, shook his head like only farmers can. She's from Creekview, isn't she? He asked. Looks like it. That whole neighborhood's built on the idea the world's one big cul-de-sac. People like her think the planet spins around their garage doors. I chuckled, but it didn't help much. And so it went. Day after day. She came again. Then again. Twice in one day. Sometimes her engine roaring like arrogance on wheels. By the third time, I knew something had to change. I wasn't raised to start fights. But I wasn't raised to roll over. Either. So, I drove into town and met with Priya Singh, my lawyer. Now, Priya is not someone you cross. She's got the patience of a saint and the backbone of a steel fence post. She combed through every property record she could find. No easement. Not even a mention. Your title's clean. Nate. Every pass she makes is trespassing. So what do? Document everything. Simple. But it changed everything. I mounted trail cameras. Set to snap motion day and night. Marked dates. Times. Directions. Photographed every rut. Every bent plant. Every spooked steer. I bought a red notebook and scrawled incident log in block letters. I logged everything: wind direction, weather, how long my cattle took to calm down. Some folks call that obsessive. I call it court-friendly. A couple days later, I took all my notes to the sheriff's office. Last time, they'd brush me off not because they didn't care, but because that's how small towns work. This time, I had pictures. This time, I had proof. But Karen, she just kept coming. By now, I stopped seeing her as a person and started seeing her as a force of nature, destructive, predictable, impossible to reason with. Every morning at 7:15, like clockwork. She even honked twice on her way out, like a victory lap. Then came the day Daisy, my pregnant cow, ended up panting by the fence, sweat streaking her sides, wild-eyed from being chased off her own pasture by that damn SUV. The wire was bent, hoof prints everywhere, panic written in every circle. Something inside me snapped. This wasn't about annoyance anymore, or even disrespect. She was hurting my animals. That was a line I couldn't let her cross. But I remembered Priya's warning: patience wins cases. Anger loses them. So I doubled down. More cameras. More signs: big, reflective, bold, private road no through traffic trespassers will be reported. Underneath, smile. You're on camera. I took pictures of every sign. Logged GPS coordinates. Printed them. Filed them. Sent copies to Priya and the sheriff. 3 days later, one sign was bent at a 45-degree angle. Another was just lying in the grass. I checked the camera. There she was, slowing down just long enough to smash the sign with a metal rod. She looked amused. I showed Hank the footage. She's either fearless, he muttered, or she's the kind of stupid that comes from never being told no. I couldn't argue. That pattern became a ritual. She'd speed up near the barn. Honk. Sometimes yell things I couldn't quite catch. Her SUV was no longer just a carrot, was a weapon. 6,000 pounds of proof she didn't care whose life or livelihood she ran over. To her, my farm was just background scenery for her commute, and I started to worry, not for her, but for me. I didn't trust myself anymore. Every farmer has a breaking point, and I could feel mine creeping closer, like a storm building up on the horizon. So I called Priya again. You sound exhausted, she said. I am. And she's not stopping. What do? Because if I confront her again, it might not stay polite. Not revenge, Nate. Not violence. Not anger preparation. If she wants to keep driving through your land like it's hers, something's going to change. But it has to be legal, permanent, and on your terms. She was right. My old man always said the strongest man isn't the one who throws the punch, it's the one who walks away without needing to. So that's what I did. I got to work. Not with anger, but with patience and paperwork. And something far better than a shotgun. You know, there's a kind of clarity that only comes when you're dead tired and too angry to sleep. That's how I felt after talking with Priya that night. I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by maps and deeds and printouts from my cameras. The incident log staring up at me like an accusation. The sun hadn't even risen, but I knew what I had to do. I whispered to myself, we're doing this by the book. Every single letter. My hands shook a little as I scrolled through all the legal websites, the product catalogs, the farm forums. No traps, no ambushes, nothing hidden, nothing dangerous. That's what Priya said. And I listened because she wasn't just protecting me from the law. She was protecting me from myself. My old man used to warn me, Andrew tempts you to do the right thing the wrong way. People like Karen count on that. They want you to snap so they can play the victim. I wasn't going to give her that. So I started searching, and that's when I found them law enforcement grade. Professional vehicle deterrent devices. Not some homemade spike board. Nothing that could hurt a person, just sturdy strips built to flatten tires. Clean and controlled. The kind they use at police checkpoints. I must have read 50 pages of specs, looking for anything that'd trip me up. I learned which models were allowed for private property, which ones required a warning sign, which ones could be used as long as you told the sheriff and made it visible. I ordered the best set I could find, expensive, heavy, with serial numbers and all the paperwork. I printed everything, invoice, shipping, manufacturer's manual. I even emailed Priya with the subject line, next step. She called me back in 10 minutes. You actually bought them? She asked, a mix of surprise and admiration in her voice. Yes. And you understand we're going to do this transparently, right? I said. I wouldn't do it any other way. I replied. She let out a long breath. Okay. Here's how we protect you first. You put up signs. Real signs. Not little ones. Big. Reflective. Visible from the road. Second, you notify the sheriff in writing before you install anything. Third, invite them to inspect it all. Fourth, you document everything: photos, timestamps, GPS tags, the whole 9 yards. I wrote it all down, line by line. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. Not because I was excited, but because I knew I was taking control. At dawn, I drove into town and bought the sturdiest, brightest signs they had. Heavy aluminum, reflective yellow paint, holes pre-drilled so you could bolt them to anything short of a tank. I lined them up on my porch boards like soldiers getting ready for parade. Private road. No through traffic. Do not enter. Vehicle deterrent devices in use. Tire damage will occur. All activity recorded. I posted one every 50 feet along the private stretch, pounding the posts deep into the ground. I took photos of each one, close up, wide, medium, every angle. Logged the GPS coordinates on my phone. Uploaded it all to the cloud. Sent it to Priya. Sent it to the sheriff's office. I drafted an email to Deputy Elena Ruiz. She'd been cool with me so far, professional. Honest. A little skeptical. But she played fair. Deputy, I intend to deploy legally purchased vehicle deterrent devices on my private road. Attached are photos of the signs and documentation for the devices. I invite the sheriff's office to inspect before installation. Respectfully, Nate Lyman. She replied within the hour. Friday morning. I'll be there. Bring all documentation. It was Wednesday. 2 days to go. Thursday. I spent prepping like I was getting ready for surgery. I laid the deterrent strips out on a table in the barn. Took photos of the serial numbers, warning labels, instruction manuals, the invoice, the packaging, everything. Put it all in a binder labeled evidence, device setup. You'd have thought I was about to testify before the Supreme Court. Around noon, Hank stopped by with a thermos of coffee. He looked at the signs, the cameras, the equipment, and shook his head with a little grin. You're going all out. Huh. I'm done letting her run this place like it's hers, I said. He took a long sip and grunted. No holes to hide in for her now. Nope. Every inch covered. That night, I did a test run, but not on the road. Not before inspection. I set up one strip in an empty gravel patch south of the barn. Followed the manufacturer's instructions to the letter. Then I drove my old truck right over it. The tires deflated instantly, clean. Controlled. No drama. Just a flat tire. Just as promised. I filmed the whole thing and added the video to the binder. Friday morning. 8 a.m. On the dot. Deputy Ruiz pulled in with another deputy I'd never met. They got out, clipboards in hand, and went over everything: signs, equipment, road angles, Signpost stability. Even taking photos themselves. Ruiz asked sharp questions. Checked sidelines. Made sure no one could miss the warnings. Finally, she turned to me and said, "They're hard to miss. Nate, anyone driving past these is making a choice." "That's the goal," I said. She signed a patrol note, dated and confirmed, saying she'd inspected the setup and received my written notice. "This goes in the official file. Call us immediately when something happens." I gave her a small smile. Not quite a laugh. "Not if." "Huh." She shrugged. "People like her don't stop until the consequences stop them." That night, sitting on my porch, I watched the sun fade out behind the corn. It was a new kind of quiet peace. Not yet, but readiness. Like the air was holding its breath. Everything was documented. Everything was legal. If Karen came through that road again, it would be the most well-documented trespass this county had ever seen. And I wasn't scared anymore, not of Karen. Not of court. Not of confrontation. Because for the first time in 6 months, the balance had shifted. She wasn't in control. Her HOA wasn't in control. Her entitlement wasn't in control. The law was. I didn't sleep well all weekend. It wasn't nerves about what was coming. I'd made peace with that. It was the waiting that got to me. Waiting's its own kind of storm. It fills your chest with thunder you can't let out. But deep down, I knew she'd be back. People like Karen never stop until the world itself says enough. Sunday night. The sky was heavy. Crickets buzzing. The air thick with that humid promise that something's about to change. I checked the cameras, laid out my evidence binder on the kitchen table, and set my alarms. When the first one went off at 6 a.m., I was already up, coffee cold, nerves steady, for camera feeds glowing on my laptop. At 6:45, I saw Hank's truck rolling past the drive. He slowed, rolled down his window, and hollered, "Think she'll show?" I shrugged. "She's never missed a Monday." He nodded and drove on, dust trailing like smoke. 7:14, just before the usual time, I caught a flash of chrome on the western camera. There she was. Same SUV. Same speed. Same glare of entitlement rolling off that hood. She flew past the first sign. Didn't even flinch at the second. And the third might as well have been invisible. It was like watching a train ignore a dozen red signals. My heart thudded in my chest. 10 yards. 5. Pop, 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 pop. The front tires deflated, hissing like snakes. The nose dipped, lurching forward. But she didn't stop. 5 seconds later, the rear tires hit the next strip. Pop. 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 Pop, metal grinding. Dirt flying. The whole Escalade crawling forward on bare rims. Screaming like a banshee. She finally stopped in the dead center of my road. Right between 2 warning signs. Right where the law said she didn't belong. I let out a slow breath. Not satisfaction. Not relief, just inevitability. The driver's door flew open. Out stepped Karen Whitfield. No sunglasses. No smug smile. She looked furious, offended. Like the universe had personally inconvenienced her. She marched to the front of her SUV, slapped the shredded tire, and screamed, "You have got to be kidding me." I walked out to meet her. Careful. Calm. Letting the cameras record everything. "You are trespassing," I said. "You've been trespassing for 6 months." She crossed her arms, trembling with rage. "No. This is an HOA easement." "No. It is not. And you know it." She pointed at the SUV. "You'll pay for my car all $90. 000 of it." I just gave her a tired little smile. "You can save that speech for Deputy Ruiz. She's on her way." Her face went pale, then red, then pale again. She whipped out her phone, hit record, and screamed, "I'm being held hostage. This man is violent. He set traps to destroy my vehicle. Attempted murder." I looked into her camera. "Ma'am, my name is Nate Lyman. This is my land. You are trespassing. There are warning signs every 50 feet. I notified law enforcement in writing before installing the devices. You are not injured. You ignored the signs." She lowered her phone. Seeing drama wasn't going to work on me. "I'm calling my lawyer." "That's a good idea." For a minute, we just stood there, listening to her SUV hiss and settle as the air bled out of the tires. Then, in the distance, I heard gravel crunching red and blue lights cresting the hill. Karen straightened up, waving her arms, trying to look like the victim. "Oh, thank God. Officer, over here," she wailed. Deputy Ruiz stepped out, clipboard in hand. Calm as ever. "Morning, Mr. Lyman." "Morning, Deputy," I replied. "What's going on here?" she asked. Before I could say a word, Karen launched into her routine. "This man tried to kill me. He planted spikes on public property." Ruiz barely blinked. "You're being cited for criminal trespassing, ma'am. And the matter of your vehicle is a civil issue. You'll need to arrange towing at your expense." Right on cue, a tow truck rattled down the road. The driver whistled low when he saw all 4 tires shredded. "Morning, Deputy. Somebody had a rough commute." Karen snapped. "Just get it out of here. That'll be $650. Card only." She pulled out a fancy black card. Declined. Tried another. Declined. Ruiz raised an eyebrow. "Mrs. Whitfield, another method of payment?" She glared at me, trembling with fury. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" I shook my head. "No, ma'am. But I'm relieved it's finally documented." Finally, her card worked. The tow truck hauled the wounded Escalade away, rims scraping like bones dragged over stone. The sound was final. Ruiz handed me a copy of the citation. "Pressing charges?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good. You did everything right." Karen stood alone, dust swirling, holding a citation and a receipt she didn't want. For the first time in months, the road was quiet again. No engine, no arrogance, just the sound of my own breath. And for the first time since this all started, I finally felt at return peace. Now, you'd think that was the end, right? SUV gone, citation in hand, the world's order restored. I thought maybe, just maybe, that'd be the last of it. But I should have known better. Folks like Karen, they don't just back down. They double down. A couple days after the showdown, I get a packet in the mail, heavy, thick, with more legalese than a government grant proposal. Karen, or more likely her lawyer, had sent me a letter accusing me of everything from property damage to attempted murder. She even called me the aggressor in the whole mess, claiming I was trying to intimidate her out of her rightful access. You can't make this stuff up. I called Priya and read her the juiciest bits. She hummed, somewhere between a laugh and a sigh. "Nate, this is excellent news," she said. "Excellent?" I deadpanned. "Priya, she's accusing me of attempted murder." That's desperation talking. You're holding all the cards now. Nate, let's give them what they want to fight. The kind that's won with evidence, not noise. So, for the next 2 hours, we built a counterclaim. Priya was in her element, calm and sharp, like a surgeon with a scalpel. I provided photos, timestamps, witness statements, receipts for every expense, crop loss, damaged gates, vet bills, new cameras. She organized them like puzzle pieces. We even added punitive damages for good measure. Hank came by the next morning, grinning. "Nate, you're not going to believe what I heard. Your little tire popper episode is all over Facebook. Folks from Creekview are calling her Spike Strip Sally." I just about spit my coffee. "That's terrible," I said, but I was laughing. "Oh, it is. And they're loving it." HOA had to hold an emergency meeting. Something about missing funds. I sat up straighter. Missing? What? Now? In the legal budget. Guess whose name is on all the disbursements? Karen's. Apparently. She's been paying her lawyer with HOA money. Folks are mad as hornets. I leaned back against the fence, staring out at the corn. I'd known she was arrogant. I'd known she was reckless. But stealing from her own HOA? Even I hadn't seen that one coming. I started to think those spike strips would be the least of her problems. A week later, the local paper ran a headline. HOA treasurer under investigation for misuse of community funds. Names in all: Karen Whitfield. Treasurer, Richard Whitfield. HOA president, Patricia Chun. Assistant treasurer, and a whistleblower named Patricia. Who told the paper? I found repeated legal disbursements with no community purpose. When I traced them, they were all tied to Mrs. Whitfield's private case. I sat at my table reading it, not feeling triumphant or smug, just validated. Like the world, for once, had straightened itself out. As farmers, we spend our whole lives fighting storms. Most come from the sky, but every now and then, one comes with a steering wheel. And sometimes, if you're patient, the storm destroys itself. Court day finally rolled around. And let me tell you, if you've never walked into a courthouse after 7 months of battle, it's not like TV. No drama. No music, just fatigue. Deep in your bones. Like you've been plowing the same field with a mule and a busted wheel. Priya walked beside me, that big evidence binder tucked under her arm. I felt old. Tired, like every step cost me a year. Inside, Karen sat next to a young, exhausted lawyer who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. She didn't have her sunglasses or her designer bag, just a plain gray suit and a face drawn tight with worry. Priya leaned over and whispered, "She looks nervous." I shook my head. "She looks cornered. There's a difference." Judge Carson took the bench, on older woman with silver hair and an expression that could slice a watermelon. When the clerk read, "State of Nebraska v. Karen Whitfield," you could feel the whole courtroom tense up. Charges: criminal trespass, destruction of private property, livestock endangerment, and thanks to the county audit, financial misconduct. The room got real quiet, real fast. Karen's lawyer went first, talking soft and measured, but the judge didn't look impressed. Priya laid out every bit of our case, from the GPS logs to the video stills, photos of the signs, emails to the sheriff, everything. The judge flipped through that binder page by page, slow and deliberate. This was not ignorance, Priya said, her voice cool as winter. This was entitlement. That word hit the room like a hammer. Even Karen flinched. When it was Karen's turn to speak, she looked smaller than I'd ever seen, her voice thin, hands shaking. All that arrogance drained out like someone had opened a spigot. When Judge Carson finally closed the binder and looked straight at her, you could feel the finality in the air. Guilty: criminal trespass, property destruction. The embezzlement case would be separate. She got hit with restitution, $8,000 for crops, gates, and Daisy's vet bill, 12 months probation, a 500-foot stay-away order from my land, banned from holding any HOA position for at least 5 years. When the gavel came down, I felt the echo through my chest like a door finally closing. And this time, it stayed closed. I walked out of that courtroom lighter. Not proud, not vindictive, just lighter. Like I could finally breathe deep again. Later that night, I parked my truck, stepped out onto the porch, and listened to the lowing of cattle out in the pasture. Daisy was grazing, her calf nuzzling at her side. For the first time in months, the quiet felt right, not fragile. Not like something that could be stolen by the next SUV to come roaring through. Just earned. Hank texted me late that evening. Heard she's selling the house. Richard too. Neighborhood's buzzing. I replied, good. Maybe they'll find somewhere with paved roads and no conscience. I sat on that porch till the stars came out, letting the silence settle into me. No engines, no honking, no trespass, just peace. And let me tell you, peace, when you've had to fight for it, tastes sweeter than anything. Summer rolled in early that year, and with it came a feeling I hadn't had in a long to me, a kind of gentle stillness that soaks into your bones. The corn grew thick and green. The wind kept up its steady song through the barn boards, and the cattle moved slow and calm. Not a care in the world. Daisy and her new calf, both healthy, both settled, became my daily reminder that some storms really do pass. It had been 4 months since the judge's gavel finally landed. And you know what? The name Karen Whitfield, once whispered in every corner of our county, just faded away. She and Richard, her husband, HOA president, partner in all things arrogant, sold their place in Meadowbrook Estates not long after the court ruling. Some folks said they moved 2 towns over. Others said they split up first, blaming each other for the mess they'd made. Either way, their chapter here was finished. And honestly, it didn't surprise me. Entitlement like that doesn't break clean. It splinters. One evening, I found myself in town picking up feed at the co-op. The diner across the street was buzzing post-church crowd. Voices overlapping like the clatter of dishes. It's funny, but in a small town, you don't need Facebook to know what's going on. News travels like prairie fire, and gossip finds its way into every corner. I sat at the counter, sipped my coffee, and listened. Two women were talking, voices low but clear enough for anyone who cared to listen. Heard she emptied the HOA's reserve fund. One said, shaking her head, $60,000 over 2 years. Can you believe that? Her friend whispered back, bless Patricia for blowing the whistle. The first one finished, and they both nodded, the way folks do when justice finally gets served. I stirred my coffee and looked out the window, thinking about how, for the first time in a year, nobody was talking about me or my farm. They weren't talking about spike strips, or courtrooms, or that crazy old man out on County Road 12. They were talking about consequences and how sometimes the people who scream the loudest about rules are the first ones to break them. That's the thing about consequences. They don't arrive alone. They come in waves. First comes the pushback. Then comes the unraveling. And Karen, for all her bluster and bravado, built her life on sand. When the tide finally went out, well, there wasn't much left standing. About a month after all that, I was out in the field, sweat pouring down my back, loading hay bales into the truck, when my phone buzzed. It was Priya. Her voice was warmer than usual, and right away I knew it wasn't bad news. The HOA board sent you a letter. She said, what do they want now? I asked, half joking, half tired. To apologize, Priya said, and to make a request. That stopped me. A request? Yes. They're hoping you'll settle the civil claim quietly, without dragging it into a long hearing. I told them you didn't want their money, Nate, but they insisted on sending their gratitude in writing. I leaned back against the tailgate, squinting out at the fields. The sun was dropping low, shadows stretching across the dirt road, now smooth and freshly graveled. No sign of chaos left. Maybe it was petty, but seeing that road fixed, untouched, felt like closing the last chapter of a long, hard book. Priya, I'm done fighting. I just want peace. She paused. You already have it. Nate, let it be. She was right. I ended the call and stood there a while, letting the evening breeze whip through my shirt, the smell of new-cut hay and sun-warmed soil filling my lungs. It was the smell of home that I defended not with anger or violence, but with patience and proof. Funny thing about justice, when you fight for it the right way, you don't just win. You stay whole. The person you see in the mirror at the end of the day is someone you can still respect. A few weeks later, I was out mending the fence near that old oak tree, right next to where the first deterrent strip had been buried. Grass had grown back, wildflowers dotting the earth, and no sign of the chaos that once threatened to take over my whole life. Sometimes, when I walked the fence line, I'd stop there, lay my hand on the post, and just think. I wasn't proud of everything I'd felt during those months. I'd come close to losing my temper more than once. My dad's words came back to me. The strongest man isn't the one who hits first. It's the one who knows when not to. I used to think that sounded soft, but now I understood it better than ever. If I'd let anger win, if I'd used force instead of law, this story could have ended with tragedy or regret instead of peace and closure. That old oak became my reminder: never let rage write the ending for you. Life settled into a new kind of normal. I fixed fences, cut hay, checked on Daisy and her calf every morning, and sat on the porch at night listening to the crickets. But something else happened, too. Word spread farther than I'd ever thought it would. Letters, emails, and messages started showing up. Folks from all over, some from neighboring counties, some from other states reaching out, telling me their own stories. Some sent thanks. Others said, I wish I'd stood up for myself sooner. And I realized, that's why I had to tell this story, not for revenge, not to gloat, but so someone else could draw their line in the dirt a little sooner, a little straighter, a little firmer. I started to believe that patience, when paired with truth, becomes a force of nature stronger than anger, stronger than entitlement, stronger than any Karen that might come rolling through. One night, late, I wandered down to the gate at the end of my road. The sign private road. NO through TRAFF. I caught the light from the porch. Same words that started the whole ordeal. Now shining in the quiet. I put my hand on the gate. Cool metal against my palm. Still private. I whispered. Still mine. God willing. Always will be. I looked out at my land. No anger. No satisfaction. Just inevitability. People like Karen don't break because of spike strips or citations. They break when the world stops enabling them. When life finally holds up a mirror. Most don't like what they see. That's the truth of it, isn't it? Folks like that count on the rest of us being too tired, too polite, or too worn down to push back. But the real truth? You're allowed to defend what's yours. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to stand firm, even when someone insists you don't have the right. If you've ever dealt with your own version of a Karen, I hope my story gives you a little courage to stay calm, to document everything, to fight your battle with the truth and not with rage. Because in the end, the peace you keep is the peace you've earned. And before I sign off, tell me, have you ever had a Karen moment in your life? Maybe not with a spike strip, but with a neighbor, a boss, a stranger, anyone who tried to drive straight over your boundaries? Share your story below. I'd sure love to hear it. And if you made it this far, well, you know what to do. Here's to peace, hard-earned and well-kept. And here's to you wherever you're watching from, whatever time it is out there.